Tens of thousands of acres are burning in Texas. We'll check in on containment efforts and the ongoing wildfire risk today on the Texas Standard.
Texas Standard is a production of KUT Austin, KERA North Texas, Houston Public Media, and Texas Public Radio in San Antonio.
I'm Laura Rice. Republicans from all over the country will be gathering in Texas soon to drum up support for the November election. A look at how the Texas GOP has evolved. Chinese biotech firms have become a major force in the global pharmaceutical market. What Americans should know about where new medicine may be coming from. Houston police have been collaborating with ICE, the impact on one man's life. And Dolly Parton. We went looking for a Texan who could help us remember this icon of country music and beyond, and found a longtime collaborator and friend. That and more coming up today on the Texas Standard. We'll have highs today of 100 in Houston, 101 in Dallas, 103 in Austin. All of those cities and everything in between are under a heat advisory, with the feels-like temperatures even higher than those I listed. It's the Texas Standard for Wednesday, August 26th. I'm Laura Rice. The extended period of hot, dry weather has put much of the state at risk for wildfire. And while there is some rain potential in the forecast for the next few days, tens of thousands of acres are already burning across the state. The biggest is what's being called the Ross Fire in the area between Abilene and Fort Worth, west of Mineral Wells. It had reached 80,000 acres, and evacuations were ordered for parts of Palo Pinto and Jack counties. While this is a rural area, there have been reports of structures destroyed. The Texas A&M Forest Service is also tracking other wildfires across the state, including 3 clustered around the area where Hamilton, Coryell, and Lampasas counties meet. Laura Stevens is Public Information Officer for the Texas A&M Forest Service. Laura, welcome back to the Texas Standard.
Thanks for having me.
So what's the current status of the big Ross Fire I mentioned?
So the Ross Fire, located in Palo Pinto and Jack County, is currently estimated at 80,000 acres and 12% contained.
So for those who aren't familiar with that area, can you give us a better sense of what's burning right now? Is it mainly farmland, or are we seeing structures at risk?
So the area is described by a heavy mix of juniper and hardwood with grasses in between, and it is showing a lot of topography area. So in between the Lake Palo Pinto and Possum Kingdom Lake area, there is some terrain, so it is impacting the way the fire behaves. So fire behavior is associated with the type of fuel, it's the topography, and then most importantly, the weather.
So I mentioned, and you said 80,000 acres. How big is that compared to others we've seen in recent Texas history? I think it was the Smokehouse Creek fire in 2024 that set the record.
Yes, that is the largest wildfire in Texas history. We've had other wildfires that have been larger than this one, but this one, the Ross Fire, is currently the largest wildfire in Texas this year.
So you mentioned 12% contained and just the topography of the area making it really kind of ripe for the spread. And it sounds like maybe difficult for firefighters. Do you have an idea of whether firefighters might be able to get a control on that a little more in the next few days?
So the topography is a challenge on that one, along with the weather. So right now, firefighters are prioritizing life safety and structure protection associated with the Ross Fire. Just like with any wildfire in the state, the first priority is life safety and structure protection. So making sure that the firefighters that are there, as well as the public, is safe.
Mm-hmm. So we mentioned evacuations. Are those still in place for Palo Pinto and parts of Jack counties?
Correct, they are. And more information on evacuations can be found from both Palo Pinto and Jack County officials.
Do you have information about structures destroyed so far? I've seen some reports on that.
We are aware that structures have been impacted by the Ross Fire. There is an assessment team that is working to evaluate and assess the level of damage to the structures in the area, and that will be continued as conditions allow.
Do we know yet what caused this blaze, or is that even the focus right now? Is it really just trying to get it under control?
The cause of the wildfire is under investigation right now, but like I said, the focus for this fire is making sure that everyone is safe and structure protection.
Well, how about, I guess, shifting gears, the other fires the Forest Service is watching? I mentioned a couple of active fires closer to the central portion of the state.
Correct. There are three fires, like you mentioned, clustered around the town of Evant between Hamilton, Coryell, and Lampasas County. The largest one is 2,650 acres and 75% contained. And then the next two, the Yellow Square in Coryell is 253 acres and 90% contained. And then the Adams in Lampasas County is 100 acres and 50% contained at this time.
Well, I mentioned there's some rain in the forecast. That's got to be a relief on some levels, but are we expecting weather conditions to make a big difference in the firefighting efforts?
For the Ross fire in particular today, high winds are expected, but not to the level that we observed yesterday and the day before. The forecast shows to be roughly around 8 miles per hour with gusts up to 24 miles per hour out of the south southwest. The humidity levels are going to be similar as to what they were yesterday, which does lead to challenging conditions for firefighters.
I wonder about other Texans listening to this and saying, "Well, that's not near me, nothing to worry about." It's just been an extended period of hot, dry weather for much of Texas. Does that have the Forest Service um, uh, kind of on edge, or just watching that this could be a potential in many parts of the state?
So there is elevated fire danger for large portions of the state due to the hot, dry conditions that we've been experiencing pretty much for the whole month of August. So Texas A&M Forest Service is asking everyone to help us to prevent future wildfires. So making sure that they are aware of all their activities that could potentially cause a spark, whether that is driving your vehicle, making sure that you do not park or drive over tall grass, making sure that your vehicle is in proper working condition. And then if you are hauling a trailer or a boat or an RV, making sure those tow chains are not in contact with the ground, which could create a spark. If you're utilizing heavy equipment or machinery, making sure that there's no debris buildup in and around the engine or parts of the motor where it could get hot and combust. Making sure that if you're mowing your lawn, you're not running over anything that could create a spark on that one. The grass is really dry in certain areas around the state. And so just making sure that you're being mindful of your actions that could cause a spark.
Laura Stevens is Public Information Officer for the Texas A&M Forest Service. Laura, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Republicans from across the country will gather in Dallas 2 weeks from now for a national party convention aimed at rallying the GOP ahead of the midterm elections. Texas is, of course, familiar territory for Republicans. The party has dominated politics here for more than 3 decades. But what it means to be a Texas Republican has changed over time. The Texas Newsroom's Blaze Gainey looks at what and who defines the party in 2026.
This summer at the Texas GOP convention in Houston, Governor Greg Abbott gave Republicans a simple assignment.
Our job is to keep Texas this election.
The implication there, keep Texas Republican. So what does that mean today?
Honestly, it depends on which Republicans you ask.
That's Shelby Williams, who used to chair the Collin County Republican Party.
There are different pockets of Republicans. Some who identify as Republican are unquestionably populist. Some, like myself, I consider myself a Reagan Republican. And then a great swath of people who identify as Republicans, maybe they're Trump Republicans, maybe they're Bush Republicans.
And all that gets filtered through a Texas lens.
Texans tend to be more conservative. So I would say they lean a little bit further right, maybe comparatively to other parts of the country.
Sarah Gardner is 31 and serves on the board of the Dallas Young Republicans.
Texas Republicans generally, I think, are aligned very much with the core conservative values.
Gardner points to lower taxes, limited government, personal liberty, and property rights, along with the Second Amendment and border security. But the party's priorities have broadened beyond that, especially in the last decade. Here's UTSA political scientist John Taylor.
Populism combined with social conservatism becomes the rule of thumb for Texas Republicans.
So then, who's leading the charge for the GOP in Texas today? Republican strategist Brennan Steinhauser says the answer to that question depends on when you ask it.
During the legislative cycle, it's the legislators and the governor that are driving the ship. But I think, leading into election season, it is more of the activist base.
They're the ones most likely to vote in primaries, so that activist base has an enormous influence on which Republicans get on the ballot and ultimately into office. And increasingly, those voters have favored the party's most conservative candidates. According to Rice University's political scientist Mark Jones, that means
the ability of sort of the moderate wing to drive policy is pretty much evaporated.
One very big example, this year's Republican runoffs, when four-term U.S. Senator John Cornyn, long identified with the party establishment, lost to Trump-backed Ken Paxton. He praised the president in his victory speech.
President Trump is the leader of our party, and his endorsement in this is the most powerful force in politics.
What Paxton said, that's true nationally. But in state government, Mark Jones stresses that Governor Greg Abbott is top dog.
Greg Abbott is still in the driver's seat of the Texas Republican Party. Now, he has to share, essentially with different people who are riding shotgun and shouting directions from the back seat. But, he is the main driver of the Republican Party today.
And with its control of the Texas legislature, Republicans have been increasingly willing to use state power to pursue social and cultural goals. Another thing UT Austin's James Henson says defines Texas Republicans today.
The focus on limiting transgender rights, the implementation of anti-DEI policies, all of those things are examples of a culturally conservative agenda that has had great success in the legislature.
So a Texas Republican can be many things: a business conservative, an evangelical voter, a Trump loyalist, or all of those and more. But Shelby Williams says there's one thing that ties them all together: liberty.
That's the central thing that underpins all Republicans. Whatever kind of Republican they think they are, no matter our identity crises, liberty, the concept of liberty.
And he hopes that underlying goal helps unite Texas Republicans before the midterms. I'm Blaze Gainey in Austin.
Still ahead on the Texas Standard, we're headed to court. The latest on the back and forth over Texas's so-called drag ban, where things stand now, plus what we can learn about the direction of cases in the Southern District of Texas based on getting to know the new U.S. attorney there. That's just around the corner.
Support for Texas Standard comes from Texas Mutual Insurance Company, committed to strengthening the state's workforce and its communities through safety and wellness grants and education initiatives. More at texasmutual.com/community impact.
This is the Texas Standard. I'm Laura Rice. A federal judge has once again struck down a Texas law aimed at restricting drag performances. The Texas Newsroom's Lucio Vasquez reports.
U.S. District Judge David Hittner says the law is so broad and vague that it violates the First Amendment. Senate Bill 12 restricts certain sexually oriented performances on public property or in front of children. Businesses can face fines, while performers could face jail time. Hittner first struck down the law in 2023, but an appeals court later set aside that decision, allowing the law to take effect in March. Austin drag performer Bridget Bandit is a plaintiff in the lawsuit.
Very happy that this was blocked. I mean, this is the second time it's been ruled unconstitutional, so it's kind of like having flashbacks,
The new ruling permanently blocks Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton from enforcing the law. Paxton called the decision profoundly flawed and says he'll appeal. I'm Lucio Vasquez in Houston.
And you're listening to the Texas Standard. Aaron Reitz, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Texas, is new to the job, but it will be up to Reitz to determine whether to prosecute the fatal shooting of a man by a federal immigration agent. Houston Public Media's Michael Atkinson sat down with Reitz and introduces us to the man leading the office.
Last month, Aaron Reitz was quietly tapped to lead one of the most crucial legal offices in the country.
The Southern District of Texas has an incredible caseload.
He spoke with me in a sit-down interview last week.
That is extraordinarily diverse and therefore lands us, I think, as one of, if not the most active U.S. attorney's offices in the country.
2 days before he was sworn in, a federal immigration officer shot and killed Lorenzo Salgado Araujo, an undocumented Mexican immigrant who lived in Houston for decades during a targeted immigration enforcement operation. That shooting has prompted protests and outrage from the community and put a national spotlight on Houston. The FBI, Texas Rangers, and Harris County District Attorney's offices are all investigating the shooting. When those investigations are complete, Reitz will determine whether or not to federally prosecute the officer who pulled the trigger.
We'll follow the law wherever it may lead, as the case may be. But I back the blue. I support DHS and ICE and Border Patrol, Customs and Border Protection. These are our federal law enforcement officers doing their best.
Reitz has worked alongside some of the most prominent conservative voices in Texas since the start of his career in 2018. He clerked for Texas Supreme Court Justice Jimmy Blacklock, served as Senator Ted Cruz's chief of staff, and worked under Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. Here's Reitz in 2025 telling CBS Texas about his work under Paxton.
Attorney General Paxton and I filed Texas v. Pennsylvania to challenge the constitutionality of the election of 2020. I led on all the border security matters.
He has never been elected to public office, despite 2 campaigns, one to serve as a state representative, the other for state attorney general. Last year, President Donald Trump appointed Reitz to the Department of Justice as Assistant Attorney General. During his confirmation hearing, several Democrats raised concerns about Reitz's past social media posts, many of which he had deleted. Here's California Senator Alex Padilla reading one out loud.
Friendly reminder that birthright citizenship is not a thing. Was this your post, yes or no?
That appears to be my X handle, yes, Senator.
Sitting down with me, Reitz says he stands by that post.
My position now as the U.S. Attorney is that I still don't believe birthright citizenship is a thing. That doesn't mean, though, that this office is going to take its interpretation of the law into its own hands. We will follow the law.
In that same hearing, another post showed Reitz floating the idea of disregarding court orders that an individual disagreed with. Illinois Senator Dick Durbin questioned Reitz when that would be permissible.
There are some instances in which a public official is lawfully bound by the holding of a particular court, in which case that official would, in fact, lawfully be required to be bound by it. I can't speak, though, Ranking Member Durbin, for all instances in which that dynamic may or may not be at play given a certain lawsuit.
Years later, Reitz calls this Civil Procedure in Federal Courts 101.
Why this is controversial? I don't know.
Less than 3 months after his confirmation last year, he resigned from that office to run for Texas Attorney General to replace his former boss, Ken Paxton, who's running for U.S. Senate. In his campaign, Reitz made headlines for calling to revoke the citizenship of Houston Democrat Jean Wu, a Chinese American. He also said on the campaign trail that Democratic leaders could be perceived as domestic enemies of the U.S. Constitution. He ultimately placed 4th in that race, failing to advance to a runoff for the Republican nomination. Fast forward to July, and Reitz has once again returned to the political stage, this time as a U.S. attorney.
We have no problem investigating, pursuing, prosecuting, and holding accountable public officials of all stripes, whether you're Democrat or Republican.
A week after becoming U.S. Attorney, Reitz released a video describing what he called preliminary findings of the ICE shooting of Lorenzo Salgado Araujo.
The driver shifted the van into reverse, then forward again, while an officer was partially inside the van or immediately next to it. During this confrontation between federal agents and a group of illegal aliens attempting to flee, one of the officers fired a single shot.
Wrights also made note that several plastic bags filled with a white crystal-like substance were in the car, saying investigators would look into possible narcotics trafficking and drug offenses. A search warrant for the van was also unsealed, saying the substance in the bags appeared consistent with methamphetamine. Here's Harris County District Attorney Sean Tier speaking on Houston Matters.
I've been doing this 20 years. I've never seen a federal search warrant unsealed, at least before a grand jury presentation, let alone the probable cause statement behind it.
Wrights, in turn, says the search warrant was never supposed to be sealed. In his telling, his office filed it and a clerical error sealed it, prompting his office to then unseal it. Weeks later, testing revealed the powder was not methamphetamines, but rather an electrolyte powder, according to public officials. But the full documentation of the tests has not been shared publicly.
The results of the test came back, and we told the public what it was. In my mind, I can't find another example of more maximally transparent and honest and forthright law enforcement and investigating.
I suppose the question becomes, why can't you release that documentation, but you can file this public search warrant that shows or makes this allegation that there may have been drugs in the car? How can you square both of those?
A search warrant doesn't make an allegation of anything. Respectfully, in your case, to sort of liken them as though you were transparent here, but quote unquote not transparent over here, well, you're treating apples and oranges as though they were apples and apples, and they're not.
Since then, Wrights' office has pushed to keep at least one of the witnesses to the shooting in federal custody. Jose Trinidad Rojas Pliego, who was in the van that day, was released from custody last month. Wrights has appealed that decision to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. I'm Michael Adkison reporting.
The Texas News Roundup is right around the corner, and you can always stay connected with us at texasstandard.org. We'll be right back.
Support for Texas Standard comes from TrialMed, conducting clinical research for over 30 years. Info on current trials in Texas at trialmed.com.
Hey, what's cooking? Make sure to join us as we check in with Texas's top taco journalists to hear about the latest innovation stories and the people behind many a Texan's favorite go-to. It's Mondo Rayo with the Tacos of Texas, next Thursday on the Texas Standard.
Support for Tacos of Texas comes from HEB.
Live from the Texas Newsroom, I'm Shelby Rose. A judge in Brownsville is expected to issue an order today in a lawsuit seeking to force the extradition of an ICE agent to Minnesota to face charges related to the shooting of a Venezuelan immigrant. Houston Public Media's Andrew Schneider reports.
Minnesota is asking the court to force Texas Governor Greg Abbott to sign the extradition warrant for Christian Castro. It's also seeking a court order for Castro to be held in Cameron County Jail past Thursday out of concern he may flee if released as scheduled. Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty posted on X.com that the U.S. Constitution is clear.
Governor Abbott is required by law to sign the governor's warrant that has been with his office since June 3rd.
Castro faces 4 counts of assault and 1 count of falsely reporting a crime related to his alleged shooting of Julio Sosa Solis in Minneapolis in January. Abbott says Texas officials are still investigating whether Castro is a fugitive or was simply reassigned to Texas by ICE. I'm Andrew Schneider in Houston.
A Dallas judge will decide who gets custody over a newborn with a heart defect, his surrogate or his genetic parents. KERA's Toluwani Osibamawo reports the 2 women in the case testified in court yesterday.
McKenna West was 20 weeks pregnant with Omar Ahmed and Nasheen Gilker's fetus when doctors detected a fetal heart abnormality. West fled from Alaska to Texas to have the baby and get him medical care, which she claims the couple didn't want. The couple denies refusing care and says they'll do what it takes to keep their son alive. A judge upheld an order preventing West from seeing or making decisions for the baby, who has received surgery. West now argues she's the child's legal mother under Texas law because she gave birth to him. I'm Toluwani Osibamowo in Dallas.
A coalition of civil rights groups is seeking a new appeals hearing to defend the Texas DREAM Act. Texas last year agreed to end the decades-old law that allowed students without legal status to pay in-state tuition. Attorney Cassandra Gonzalez with the Texas Civil Rights Project says what some college students are already feeling, with tuition more than doubling overnight.
The harsh reality is that they may no longer be able to afford to finish college. And so we know that is happening across the state.
The Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals rejected an appeal last month seeking to restore the law. The large wildfire west of Fort Worth has grown to 80,000 acres, and it's only about 12% contained. The fire started Monday afternoon, consuming about 78 square miles in Jack and Palo Pinto counties. I'm Shelby Rose in the Texas Newsroom.
You're listening to statewide news from public radio stations across Texas. This coverage is only possible because of support from listeners like you. You can help sustain and grow Texas news coverage by donating to your local public radio station today.
33 minutes past the hour, Texas Standard Time. I'm David Brown. When American drug companies go looking for the next promising cancer treatment or breakthrough medicine, increasingly they're finding it in China. Chinese biotech firms have gone from a tiny presence in drug licensing deals just 5 years ago to a major force in the global market today. In fact, Texas Congressman Nathan Moran says that raises a much bigger question. Where will the medicines Americans depend on come from in the future, and who will ultimately control them? Will Maddox is a reporter who's been looking into this for the publication Fierce Biotech. Will, welcome to the Texas Standard.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.
Before we get into Congressman Moran's argument, help us understand why this matters. If American drug companies are finding promising new medicines in China, why should anyone be concerned about that?
Yeah, well, it depends a little bit on who you talk to. There's kind of two arguments happening. One is sort of the idea that the U.S. needs to be in control of the medicine supply should a geopolitical conflict arise, and China or whoever sort of cut off supplies to medicine. There's also sort of the angle of investment going into those businesses, and there in China. And perhaps, at the deficit of American sort of biotechs and drug development. So there's kind of an investment side, and there's also sort of a medicine manufacturing side that people are worried about.
Congressman Moran is saying China is beating us on our ground game, which is pretty striking language you use in the headline of your story. What does he mean they're beating us at our ground game?
Yeah, his primary focus, he's worried about on the investment side in terms of where the money is flowing. But his primary focus when he spoke to me was talking about the actual ingredients that medicines are made of, and the manufacturing side, and how a lot of those businesses have been offshored to a lot of places, China especially. And I think he wants to make sure that for the existing medicines that have been made and that are, helping keep our country healthy and heal from cancer and all the things, that we have a supply and access to those medicines that isn't in danger of being interrupted by, some geopolitical conflict. There's kind of ongoing tension with China in a lot of areas, which is kind of why he sort of is thinking about this, because of the China Communist Party, select committee that he's a part of.
So let me get this straight. There's a potential that China may be making medicines for which they could hold the exclusive key, sort of a front-to-back supply chain lock. I guess Moran is suggesting that in the future, if Americans need their medicine and they're counting on it from China, well, that China might be playing a long geopolitical game here, that the U.S. could find itself held hostage by its need for medicines that only China could provide?
Exactly right. Yes, he's focused on the supply chain and making sure that thinking about how Americans can have access, or that supply chain is in friendlier hands, or even better, domestic. That we're producing these medicines domestically, and should a larger conflict arise, of course, that's not the case right now. That we still have do lots of business with China in the biotech world, and medicines are flowing all directions. But should a conflict arise, that could be in danger if China has possession and control of that medicine supply chain.
Well, how would policymakers try to protect American competitiveness without cutting off U.S. companies or patients from potentially important medicines?
Well, that is definitely the rub, and the argument that's kind of going back and forth in the biotech world is that, there's congressmen and senators. There's a couple bills that have been introduced to add scrutiny both to investment in China, in terms of where money flowing into those businesses to help advance medicines that have been invented or come up, that have been invented in China. And then there's also other movements in chat to invest domestically in increasing manufacturing, increasing production, R&D, and that sort of thing. And so there's kind of two sides to it because to cut off investment or to sort of wall in China, in theory could cut off Americans from innovative medicines that are coming out of China. And so there's that tension between how do we, build up the U.S. industry, protect the supply chain, while also not limiting, Americans who need innovative medicine, not limiting their access to medicines that might come from China. And so there's that tension is there in that world.
Watch this space. Will Maddox certainly is. He's with Fierce Biotech, and you can check out his story. We'll have a link to it at our website, texasstandard.org. Will, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Support for Texas Standard comes from UT San Antonio, a Carnegie Tier 1 public research institution, and designated as Texas's National Institute on Aging Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. More at ambition.utsa.edu.
It's the Texas Standard. I'm David Brown. Dolly Parton had millions of fans in Texas, but relatively few direct ties to the state. One of the strongest was with a man who's been helping to define the sound of Texas music for more than a half a century. Ray Benson, the Grammy-winning band leader of Asleep at the Wheel, first got to know Parton personally as a songwriting collaborator in the early 90s, working together on a film project. That collaboration grew into a friendship that lasted for decades. But as Parton began canceling appearances in recent weeks, she played down health concerns, saying she'd had some digestion problems and was dealing with dizziness and dehydration. Yesterday, Parton's family announced her passing at the age of 80. Today, the New York Times reports she'd been admitted to a cancer center in Nashville on Friday, unbeknownst to all except those closest to her. Ray Benson joins us now. Ray, welcome back to the Standard. You'd heard these reports about her declining health, I assume?
Yeah. I tried to get a hold of her, but I think all the numbers have changed. And it's too soon. I know she's 80 years old, but Willie's 93 and still working. So I don't know. It's a shame because the woman was not only a force of nature, a great songwriter, singer, presenter, etc., actor, but she did such incredible, philanthropy. It's just real, and I'm sure that will continue.
Ray, she was quite, for all that she did on stage and screen and all of that, and all the terrific songs she recorded. Something that I don't think that she gets enough credit for, at least from the general public, is what a mean picker she was. She was one heck of an instrumentalist. Do you get that sense too?
Well, she kind of, I'll tell you, Dave, her fingernails were too long to do anything on a guitar or banjo. So she had it kind of rigged up with these open tunings that she got away with it. But no, her talent was singing, songwriting, and being Dolly with a capital D. She was something else. And anywhere she went, she was Dolly. Dolly with a capital D. I said to her one time, I said, Just put on a ball cap and a bulky sweatshirt and go walk around, and you can see the world. Said, "Oh, Ray, they don't want," and they'd recognize me anyway.
Did you get a chance to? I think you got a chance to at least record a song with her. Did y'all share any co-writing credits or anything like that?
Oh God, I wrote 6 songs with her. I co-starred with her in a movie of the week called Wild Texas Wind. It was Dolly Parton, Ray Benson, and Gary Busey.
Wow.
And get on YouTube there, and it'll crack you up. It was 92, I think we did, 1992. So yeah, no, we worked very close. And then we did. She sang a duet with me on one of my solo records of one of the songs we wrote called "You Better Leave That Cowboy Alone."
What was she like to work with? Was it must be kind of hard to share songwriting duties. I don't know how that would go. Were you working long distance, or were you in the same room there working on something?
Oh no, yeah, no, we'd sit down face to face and yeah, work with it. And then sometimes she'd send me ideas. We didn't have back in '92. We didn't have the internet, so
for sure, yeah.
91 we started working on it. No, we sit there and just hash them out, and she was wonderful. She slapped my wrist a few times in terms of songwriting, and you have to respect somebody of her stature to do that. And it's
what do you mean slapped your wrist? Were you trying to get a little bit edgy or something, or what?
I got a little too wordy, too clever with the words, and which is wonderful, man. I mean, that's what co-writing is all about. If you're lucky enough to do it with a master like her, and she was a master. She had the ability to take a simple chord form of country music and turn it into a message.
The first time I think I ever saw Dolly Parton, it was on a black and white TV. And she was with Porter Wagner talking about those tiles and boxes of breeze. I don't know if you remember that.
Of course I do. Yeah, no, it's that's where I first saw Dolly. In fact, I went to the Dolly and Porter show in 1972. We were in California. She came to the theater there, and me and the whole band went down and watched her. She was incredible. No, of course. No, she was, from the day I started listening to country music, there was Dolly Parton.
What is it that she did for country music? She sort of cosmopolitanized it in a sense, don't you think?
Yeah, but you never left her hillbilly roots, of course. With a 9 to 5, You Come Again, all those pop songs, which were fabulous, and the stuff she did with Kenny Rogers.
Right.
Of course, yeah. She but that's what she wanted. She wanted to be a big star. That was all there was to it, and her entire life was dedicated to that. And it was who she was, and she there was that's why I call her Dolly with a capital D.
Why do you think that she seemed to touch so many people in so many different ways all across the board? I mean, she was not just a country star, but she was a gay icon. She was mainstream America too. Everyone knew Dolly, and there are very few entertainers like that. Willie might be one, but I can't think of too many that fall into that category. I wonder what it is about what she had.
Well, charisma for one thing. I mean, she walked into things. Second of all, that was her line about it takes a lot of money to make me look this cheap. Well, it was like she had to the wigs. That was her funny joke was Dolly, your hair looks great. How long did it take them to do it? She said, I don't know. They're never there when they do it. she had a thing just wigs and one time when we did that movie together, one of the scenes where she comes out of the shower and she had the wig, and the director said, "You can't have that wig on. You're in the shower." and she took it off. She had beautiful hair.
Wow. Yeah. What do you think we've lost with Dolly's passing, Ray?
Well, Dolly came from nothing. Dolly came from as poor and I don't quite have the word, but poor and lacking any really culture of the outside world. A huge culture, a mountain culture, very strong and very beautiful. But she came from all of that and became this huge international pop star. What a journey from a holler in East Tennessee to go from that to where, it's just incredible.
Ray, thank you so much for taking a few moments out to talk with us about your reflections on Dolly. Sure do appreciate it, and I know a lot of people share the heartbreak that I can hear in your voice right now.
No, yeah, I'm staring at these pictures I got of her and me, and it's just like, all I can say is I'm a lucky man to have known her, and the world is lucky to have been able to experience her music and her generosity and just her presence. And thank you for calling, and howdy to your great listening audience. I'll be listening to you, Dave.
Thanks again, Ray. Take care now.
Adios.
All right. Bye-bye.
Support for Texas Standard comes from HEB and the My HEB app, which is available for download, and shopping fresh departments like seafood, produce, bakery, and deli, and scheduling curbside pickup or home delivery. More at heb.com.
Watch out, Cowboys.
This is the Texas Standard. I'm Laura Rice. The Houston Police Department called U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement more than 100 times from April through June, and officers sometimes detained people with immigration warrants for hours, waiting for agents to take them into custody. That was the subject of a fiery Houston City Council committee meeting this week. Houston Public Media's Dominic Anthony Walsh tells us about one man who was detained by HPD officers and handed over to ICE.
Eric Lopez met his girlfriend more than 10 years ago when he arrived in Houston at the age of 17, fleeing from gang violence in Honduras. After building a life together, he was deported to Honduras this summer, tearing the couple apart.
Hablamos por videollamada todas las noches.
We video chat every night. Sometimes we spend 2 or 3 hours. Sometimes she gets home from work at 7 p.m., showers, makes dinner, and then calls me around 8. We finish talking around 10 when she goes to sleep.
He worked in construction, supporting his girlfriend and 2 kids.
Back in Houston, I could at least say I had a stable job, my own car, and my own things. My home, my car, my partner, my family. Here in Honduras, it's very hard to find work right now. There just aren't any jobs.
And, he says, it's still dangerous.
Todavía no ha cambiado eso de las maras.
The gang situation hasn't changed. It's still a bit dangerous because of the gangs. So if they see you have a little money or something, they start hassling you, trying to extort you, things like that. So it's very different.
His return to Honduras started with a traffic stop. Randall Callanan, his attorney, said Houston police officers pulled Lopez over for allegedly rolling through a stop sign in June. According to data from the Houston Police Department, he was detained for 1 hour and 47 minutes while officers searched his car and waited for federal immigration agents to respond to a civil immigration warrant. It was one of more than 100 calls from HPD to ICE from April through June, according to HPD data.
I am calling this meeting to order.
Police Chief Noe Diaz and Executive Chief Thomas Hardin were slated to answer questions about that cooperation this week during a City Council committee meeting, but they did not show up. A lower-level official filled in for them, refusing to answer most questions about specific cases and policies. Councilmember Alejandra Salinas asked why, but Senior Assistant City Attorney Melissa Azadeh stepped in.
Where is Chief Diaz and where is Chief Hardin, and why are they not here today?
As counsel for the city, I'm going to instruct Mr. Mallard not to answer that question. Those are strategic decisions made by the legal department.
That's because Eric Lopez filed a lawsuit against the city over the nearly 2-hour traffic stop. The lawsuit seeks a federal court order blocking HPD from detaining people over civil immigration warrants, as well as monetary damages. Still, Salinas wanted answers from HPD officials about why the department holds people for so long, up to 3.5 hours in one case.
Their refusal to be here is nothing short of cowardice.
The question centers on administrative warrants, non-criminal civil warrants issued by ICE itself, and whether HPD can detain someone while waiting for ICE to respond.
It's a somewhat gray area.
Seth Chandler is a law professor at the University of Houston.
There is no exact case case on this point. And the question is, can they continue to detain you for a little while they wait for federal authorities to come and get you?
Out of the more than 100 calls from HPD to ICE, Eric Lopez is one of at least 19 people officers handed over to agents from April through June. He says he misses his life in Houston, his girlfriend, the kids, and his freedom.
It's the freedom you have after work. You can pursue your hobbies. For me, honestly, playing soccer was something I love doing. Sharing that time with my friends or my family, just that freedom.
I'm Dominic Anthony Walsh in Houston.
And you're listening to the Texas Standard. Audience and engagement editor Wells Dunbar is in the studio with me now with the Talk of Texas. Hey, Wells.
Hi, Laura. Great to be with you. And yes, on the Talk of Texas this week, we are talking about food recalls, products ranging from blueberries and eggs to lettuce and jalapenos. And we're curious if these seemingly omnipresent announcements have changed how our listeners eat, how they shop, and maybe they're avoiding bagged salads, deli meat, frozen meals, certain brands, etc. Because it does seem like there have been so many in the news lately. And of course, a political dimension to this, lots of questions, lots of unanswered questions. So that's why we're trying to get to the bottom of that this week. And we're hearing from folks about whether or not it is affecting them personally. Got an email from Nicole who says, there have been so many food recalls that I'm just trusting HEB to remove them from the shelves for us. Fingers crossed. Lots of empty spots on the shelves lately, and that goes to the role that our retailers have to fill in these times, because as Nicole wrote, there have been so many. It's a difficult thing to keep track of by yourself, and that's a feeling that another listener picks up on. Anne Sansone via Facebook. She says she's staying away from most of the tainted foods, but it's hard to keep up lately. What else is there? Moreover, she writes, it's the distrust of the system that's worse than missing out on some nutritious foods, and I think there is something to that, these questions. Even if you do go ahead with it, just that discomfort, those, I think I was telling someone the other day, I took a photo of a salad kit I had in my fridge, uploaded it to ChatGPT, said, are there any recalls associated with this product? Thankfully, there were not. But those are the sorts of things that I'm hearing from people. And we want to hear from our listeners out there. So easy to do. Go to texasstandard.org/talk and upload a voicemail message for us. Super simple. Just go there on your smartphone, press record, and tell us if whether or not these recalls are affecting you personally, the way you shop, the way you eat, etc. Because we're getting some good responses already. But we'd love to hear yours. Again, there at texasstandard.org/talk. Lots to talk about there.
Yeah. My family doesn't eat out that much, but that's kind of another layer of concern for a lot of people, right? You're trusting your grocery store. You're also trusting, those who are preparing food elsewhere for you and making sure that they're keeping track. So
I didn't even think about that, because we hardly ever eat out now, it seems like, too, Laura. Birds of a feather.
Saving the dollar when we can.
Gotta do it. Gotta stretch them. Well, shifting gears, the death of Dolly Parton at 80 years old, just monumental. Especially, we feel it deeply in Texas, here in a music city like Austin, but across the entire state. Many listeners deeply affected by her death. Amy Ferris on our Facebook page says, I can't quit crying. We lost a truly good human, an anchor for doing what's right and just and kind. She did so much for so many without judgment, and really did leave an indelible legacy. It's like we heard earlier in the program, David's conversation with the Sleep at the Wheels, Ray Benson, on that musical legacy, but just so many personal, legacies that she founded. Everything from donating like 300 million books to helping fund the Moderna COVID vaccine. It's incredible. Yeah. So an incredible life that many people are paying tribute to and remembering online, Laura.
Yes, our executive producer, Rhonda Fanning, a huge Dolly Parton fan. We all were thinking of her when the news came out. 80 years old, it really feels like we should have had at least another 15 years of Dolly Parton. Remember with us and let us know what you're thinking over at texasstandard.org/talk. You can also just Send us a message. We love your feedback. You can also find us on YouTube these days. Every episode of Texas Standard is there, along with some extended interviews. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
Philanthropic support for Texas Standard comes from Casey and Scott O'Hare, the Winkler Family Foundation, Lynn Dobson and Greg Wooldridge, Adrian Killam, the George Huntington family, and St. David's Foundation. Additionally, Texas Mutual Insurance Company is a founding sponsor of Texas Standard.